Most of us are poor. And we're all different colors, skins, and we speak a gazillion different languages. So inequity is actually very rarely talked about. But there is one issue that has come up over the past 3 years. This is my third, I'm just finishing my third year teaching at the Aurora's school. Okay, now how do I go to the next?
I got you.
Okay, so in 1974, the Lau versus Nichols case. Has anybody ever heard of this? Yeah? It says, pretty much says that it's, again, it's discrimination under Title VI, that kids who need language accommodations are denied them. It's discriminatory. I love this quote by Nelson Mandela, though. If you talk to a man in a language he understands, that goes to his head. Do most of our kids speak at least a little bit of English? Yeah, they do. If you talk to him in his language, that goes to his heart. So when we're asking kids to read things on the MAP test, to read things in our normal classes, and we really want to hit home with some of these things, especially in science, that's my passion. I want kids to understand about life, about our planet, about how things work. It's my passion. I want them to do that. But how do I make them do that if I'm constantly talking to them in English? That doesn't work. Okay. So, the New American School mission, I want to read it one more time because it's really important. The mission of the New American School is to empower new immigrants, English language learners, and academically underserved students with the educational tools and support they need to maximize their potential, succeed, and live the American dream. And I have a question. Are we empowering our immigrants if we do not provide accommodations on MAP tests, which we currently do not? The only accommodation our students get from MAP tests is extra time. And actually, this is like, my second year in my master's program. I will graduate in 2 weeks. And I know, right? And all the research I've done says extra time is not enough, and it invalidates the results for the kids whose language is who have English as a first language. It invalidates the results. They shouldn't be given extra time. So we have to be able to think of something else. So as part of an assessment, this is for my class, an equity-focused needs assessment. I spent about a half an hour walking around and observing the students and the decor on the hallway walls and in the classrooms. It was so beautiful. You can say I'm biased for our own students. I love them. I thought students speak so respectfully to each other. Not happening in a normal public school. And to the teachers, it is truly a privilege to teach here. I especially loved hearing all the different languages spoken simultaneously. These types of schools are very rare. Most schools have socioeconomic and racial issues they must contend with daily. All this school needs are MAP tests with multilingual accommodations. That's it. That's all we need. And it's not asking for much. So for the qualitative data, I'm taking a chunk out of my master's thesis, and I just simplified it for the information for this class. I didn't want to redo it. So I took 3 of those statements for 42 New America students in the Thornton campus. When I asked MAP tests should be in my language, only 1 disagreed. 0 strongly disagreed, 1 disagreed. Well, duh. They need it. They're frustrated. They don't understand. And they're 17, 18, 19-year-old kids who know when they're like being not, they're not being, their image is not being given any dignity. MAP tests accurately show my intelligence. This is disturbing. 1 strongly disagree and 6 disagree, which means that's 35 out of 42 students. I think they might have the intellect of an elementary school student. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And they are that low. Our MAP test scores average is 2nd to 3rd grade. They are that low. MAP test results are fair. Only 1 disagreed and 1 strongly disagree and 3 disagree. I'm thinking they actually don't know how they do because too many teachers feel their humiliation, and it would be even more humiliating to tell them. I don't want to tell a kid who gets straight A's in my class, oh, well, you do great in my class, but on a MAP test, which is really important, you're at about a 3rd grade level. I wouldn't want to tell them. Would you want to tell your kid that? No way. No way. Okay. So recent advances in AI. Mr. Newman graciously purchased a subscription for the whole school to Magic School AI generator. And I was able to create a map style reading test, and all I said was, give me a map style test at the 6th grade level. And then I said, I needed it at the 8th grade level, I needed it at the 10th grade level, I needed it at the 12th grade level. So I created a 20 problem test with 4 reading passages at 4 different levels. And I attached a multilingual glossary. Not all of the words were translated, just as it got harder, I translated more words. Like at the 12th grade level, I translated about 8 words. But only keywords were translated, and they had the multilingual glossary. And 6 languages on the multilingual glossary. Here's the comparison. The red is the map test from last December. The blue is the test from Magic School. The average grade level for the map test in 2024, this is for reading, was between 2nd and 3rd grade level. The average grade level for the Magic School test was 9th grade level. And that's just because I translated some words. Not a whole lot. Not a whole lot. They can show us how much they know, and then they can feel a little bit of confidence in themselves. And we can feel confident telling them how they did and what they need to do more to improve. That's a whole lot easier than saying, wow, man, you're at the 3rd grade level. I guess you can't go much lower than that. You have to go up. That's not nice to say. That's really not. Okay. So, I had finished teaching all my classes. It was, I think it was Monday afternoon. No, it was last week, that's right. And I was just searching online because I needed some data. And I found this unbelievable website. And it is supported by NWEA, who creates the map tests. So they actually said, one more thing. It came out in 2020, during the pandemic. So nobody was really aware of what was going on with NWEA and the multilingual accommodations. They say Universal is available to all students and includes a Spanish-English dictionary. And then there's designated, means it's available upon evidence of need. So if you were a school, most kids, about 80% are Spanish speakers. So we could use Spanish-English dictionary, that's universal. But what about the kids who speak Persian, the kids who speak Swahili, the kids who speak Amharic, all the other languages that we cater to? We need special permission. Now, Mr. Newman has informed me that that's not your job, but your backing would be huge. Your backing would absolutely be huge. What is needed for the students who speak other languages, and why I am addressing you today? I need your support. I need kids to feel that it doesn't matter what language I speak. When I take a test, I'm going to actually be able to understand what is being asked of me. Okay, next. Is that it? Okay, so identifying the barriers. Please, I'm asking you, ask me any questions. I don't care if you think, I might be stepping on some toes. No, please ask me any questions. Or just tell me what you're thinking.
Right away, one thing that comes to my mind is that we would have to ask, get the authorizers' understanding, get CDE's understanding of, will it skew the data so much if we now, after the years that we've been implementing MAP as our alternative assessment for our AC SPF, our school performance framework, will it skew it so much that the data then will be so different that it's not credible?
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah, so we have to figure out what that looks like. But then also understanding what MAP's intention is with doing something like this and having that available. Because, when you look at a state assessment, the CMAS test or SAT, giving certain parts of it in the native language is not a best practice because it does skew data. So we'd have to look at what the analysts say and what CDE says. What are the rules around all that? You know, I understand the thought or behind it.
Yeah.
I just want to understand the other side of it.
Okay, so do we just contact CDE or can we
I would have
contact
to,
NWEA?
that I don't know right now. Well, NWA wouldn't be able to give us their blessing. They could say, yeah, it's available, but we need to talk to our authorizers because they're the ones that hold us accountable to our data, which in turn CDE hold us accountable to our data. So we have to look and see what that is. I'd have to talk to some people there to say, hey, this is what we're looking at. What is it? Can we use it as part of our optional measure, which is MAP, NWA MAP?
Mm-hmm.
Is that going to be something that we can use? Because I don't know if any other schools in the state are using that as an optional measure with NWA, because a lot of schools, especially AEC campuses, use NWEA as their optional measure.
Okay, and I actually you thought, that's probably an issue. You're gonna go like if the data is anything like what they did on the Magic School test, that was a 6.6 grade level difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge. You talk about a major skew. That's
Oh
huge.
no, I understand that completely.
Yeah.
I just want to know that, like, I'm going to say it, the powers that be,
Mhm.
because if we're the only school doing this, then our data is going to look very different than the other schools that we're ranked against when we look at that. Because that also goes to median growth percentile. If other schools are not using the tools that are provided, that NWA has provided because the state doesn't allow it, but if we do it, then we're not going to have adequate comparison data. It's just going to be that your school,
Yeah.
this is how you perform. But we have nothing else to show as far as median growth percentile.
Okay, so I agree. I completely agree. That's an
Yeah.
issue. Now, but you have to think also that this information did come out during the pandemic. Not too many people were aware of it.
Right, no, I understand that.
Do
And
you
it came out
think-
from NWEA.
Yeah.
But I don't know if anybody has adopted those allowable accommodations.
Okay.
And
So-
that's what we need to figure out.
Yeah, but do you think that if we take some initiative, that others might follow? What do you think, Michelle?
I was wondering, and maybe I didn't understand this fully, but you mentioned that this would be as a universal accommodation?
So Spanish to English is universal. If it's
According to
Greek-
MAP.
Yeah,
According
according
to
to MAP. If it's Amharic or any other language, then it's called designated.
So I wondered with that, I've been dabbling in the SPED world this year, if there's any documentation that then we would need to use to back that up.
I have the website that has everything documented. It's a
But-
PDF.
And that's through NWEA.
Yes.
So what I'm talking about is NWA is just the provider of the test. And the things the resources that
Yeah.
you found. They're not the powers that be that say, yes, you can do this, or no, this is not going to fly. So I don't know what their answers would be. That's why I would like to do more digging and talking to those people, because we would have to talk to the data analysts and the people that set the rules for the optional measure, the SPF, at the state level, but then also at the authorizer level.
Okay, so I have to ask you, and please be honest with me, Santiago, do you have too much on your plate right now? Because I want to help.
I would want to do the first approach,
Okay.
and then go from there.
Okay, but you're gonna have to ask me because I really want to help. I don't care how.
Oh, I agree, but
Yeah.
I can't override our authorizers.
Exactly. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I
Absolutely.
can present it to them. I can tell you one of our contacts as an authorizer would be like, absolutely not.
Only one?
Well, that's because I know what their answer is going to be.
Only one?
The other one, no. Let me finish.
Sorry.
I don't know what the other authorizers, because I don't know them as well. Well, actually, I do know. 2 of our 3, they would say no, because it's not an equitable distribution of that accommodation amongst the alternative ed campuses.
JeffCo would say no for the record. So
Thank you, John. That was my gut feeling, but so all 3 of our authorizers will probably say, yeah, that's not a equitable accommodation for your alternative school performance framework.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
And I would also say from a data perspective, the data you've proved, I don't believe you had a control group, is that correct?
I had,
Like students that were asked to grow without being present versus students that got the vocab. So there could be so many variables involved with why
Right.
those students grow that I don't know that you could attribute to AI. I'm just speaking from a person who's did a lot of data crunching and schooling, research, etc., that I don't know that the data would be valid. And then the other question I would have is, I don't know where you've presented this data, but I hope if you present it outside the organization, you've got IRB approval from somewhere. Otherwise, sorry, not to rain on the parade. I'm just
no,
being
you're
frank.
fine. I actually worked with my professor. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, no, it's good information to have, and it may be able to spark a conversation with people,
Yeah.
though I don't think we can make a decision based on what's going on now, because there are so many factors. We have to look at how it was done, and, is Magic School AI a reliable source
Of course not.
to generate what MAP generates as far as an assessment?
Yeah, and of course
Yeah.
that's up for
Yeah.
argument.
So like it
Absolutely.
wouldn't be something that I could say, hey, here's some things we found through a master's thesis study. Can we use this accommodation for our optional measure? It's not that, I don't think we're at that point yet. I think it would be something to start the conversation with our own data analysts to say, hey, is this an accommodation? Because I know as a teacher and a proctor of even CMAS, to give accommodations to certain kids, to general universal accommodations, it has to be what Michelle said. It has to be documented, and if you're going to be providing these types of accommodations, it has to be something because that's an approved accommodation by the state.
Okay. So
And
I
it-
won't- you go
yeah,
ahead.
sorry, and
No.
it would also have to be, available during everyday class.
Yes.
So we can't provide an accommodation on a test, like, again, these are the intricacies that we need to
Right,
look at.
yeah.
It would also need to be available on every day, every class, all the time, to be able to provide it as an
Yeah, I think it's a great conversation
Yeah.
starter,
I think so too.
and
Yeah.
being able to talk to certain people and be like, hey, here's what
How do we do this?
here's some of the things that a study was done. Let's a small study. It wasn't huge, because it wasn't all of our population. It wasn't
Exactly.
all
Exactly.
AECs.
It was
wasn't those
definitely
things.
a pilot
Yeah,
program.
so just to say, and it might be something that maybe our teachers start giving this assistance to our students, because it may be a great practice to have in the classroom, that when they get to an assessment, they're going to be so familiar with it, they might not even need the accommodation because they're going to show growth.
Okay.
So I mean, there's different ways to think about it and look at all the ideas that come with this, and then go from there to say, hey, can we change some of our implementation of what we're doing already for supports and accommodations that we're giving our kids in the classroom, and then springboard from there.
Okay. So I have an inkling, but I want to ask it anyway.
Are we-
What is Colorado doing to say, what loophole are they finding to say not providing accommodations is okay? That's a loophole. It's the law. Title VI is a law. It says that we have to provide accommodations to multilingual learners. They must have found a loophole to say, well,
But
that's a loose interpretation.
I think you're seeing it from one standpoint, the ones sitting underneath the gold dome that have dictated to the State Board of Education, who dictate to CDE what needs to happen. They're the ones that find the way to, here's what's approved, right? But then also it comes from the federal government too. The federal government has said through SAT and CMAS and any state accommodations, these are the ones that are approved. These are the ones that you can give universally. These are the ones that we need support through, whether it's an IEP or in a 504. These are the ones that are approved through that. So if you could show that there's been regular accommodations given, established, thank you for the word, established, then you can also give them on an assessment. But that person needs to be taking an assessment separate from everybody else that doesn't get that. You see what I'm
Correct.
saying?
But we
So
can-
those are the
yeah.
types of things.
So I'm thinking we can get the ball rolling
No,
now?
can an accommodation according to, can an accommodation be made in every language?
We have dictionaries in every language but one. There's a student we have from Mauritania, he speaks an ancient tribal language that is not in Google. But every other language can be accommodated.
And Google's gotten pretty good, but
Yeah.
it also isn't the best,
Yeah.
you know, so
Yeah.
it might not be as accurate in those languages, because I know you all have found in Spanish it's not even
Yeah.
completely accurate, and it
Right.
depends on also dialect, right?
Yeah,
And country of origin.
yeah.
So it's something that I could poke around at, you know, I don't know what they'll say.
Okay, but I'd appreciate the effort.
Yeah,
that'd be
I
really
mean,
good.
Well, let me tell you, when I left, I started my career at CSU Pueblo, and from there I went to New Mexico Highlands University in Las
Yeah.
Vegas, New Mexico. And we brought with us a bilingual education program. We just got the money out of Washington to do it, and it was a master's degree program. And so everything was done to accommodate the bilingual sector, our teaching, the way we taught, the way we worked. One of the problems we had, and it became a problem that just grew and grew with time. One of our languages, all of the bilingual programs were in Spanish and English, except for one. One was the Tiwa in English. And Tiwa, there's no literature, there's no basis to be able to do the comparable things in Tiwa that we did in Spanish and English. So I ended up having to have my student, the one that's going through the program, create his own solutions. And I don't know how you can, I don't know what kind of accommodation that is, but it's not a it was an accommodation out of this, that moved that part of the program out of my control. I could not certify to its quality because it was the student's hands, because it was his language and I didn't know it. I couldn't work it.
Yeah.
And I was the language expert on the scene, and I had to what do you would call it, give that student, delegate the responsibility to the student, which is kind of scary, you know, to do that, because I couldn't go before a board, I could not go before a public body and certify that that was a quality accommodation, because it wasn't my doing, it was not my product. And fortunately, the students came out great. He went on to become a school principal
Wow.
and a superintendent.
That's awesome.
Yeah, went to Santa Fe and did great things over there.
That's really
But the
good.
point is that during his, I just had to trust him to create and go through the quality part of that. And I don't know what kind of tools we have to guarantee those kind of things with us. How far do we go before we lose control?
Right.
And
Right.
especially, for example, even in Spanish, most of our students haven't had a formal education in Spanish.
Okay.
The only language is their Spanish is the spoken language. That means that all the structures of language are missing.
Yeah.
And because they're missing, then there's a quality issue associated with because they're written tests, right?
Exactly. Well, no,
Okay.
they're computerized.
The computerized,
Yeah,
but they're written,
exactly.
they're computerized tests. So it creates another issue in terms of, I know what curriculum they have had in English, so I know that I can compare that, but they haven't had the same kind of structural
Right.
development in Spanish, for example. That's another issue that needs to work on. God, I wish we could do this. I wish, we wonder, wouldn't it? But I know that the powers that be, we're controlled by a very rigorous state system that demands a lot of us. We have to kind of work through that, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we can't work around it. We can just work through it, and then when we present to the public, that is our authorizers, we have to present and the good thing about that is we can give them, before we present our results or present our progress, we can always give them a context, okay, here's what we have, here's what the number of students we have, the kind of students we have, and this is the kind of difficulty we have had, and that kind of thing, and then we give our report that shows that we answered most of those questions. They appreciate it, even though they see that overall we're not where we need to be. And that's how we manage, right? That's how we manage our getting authorized. You know, because we have to set up the context for them.
Alright, so-
And that creates, and if we don't have a basis to do a context in terms of what they understand to be the measure,
Yeah.
then we have a hard time. I don't know if we could we even have like the report that she's mentioned, the one you're working on?
Mhm.
Could that be part of a presentation to a school board?
It's a master's
You know?
thesis, might be.
What would that, even if it didn't mean anything in terms of?
That I don't know.
No,
I
see,
have, yeah,
it's just to say
yeah,
that, listen.
I need to just wrap my head around, I
Right.
know what you're hoping for.
Yeah.
And those of us that have been in education for a long time, we've been hoping for the same thing, though it has to be something that everybody's gonna do that's being measured by this assessment. And if that's not gonna happen, then the powers that be are gonna be like, yeah, absolutely not. So that's why we have to figure out what is it that we truly want? What is the next step? But I have to wrap my head around that first. And I can talk to key people to say, can you help me just be my thought partner in this?
That would be awesome.
But I don't know, first I need to wrap my
Yeah,
head around it,
yeah.
So-
Yeah.
Robert.
I'm actually okay with that.
Okay.
I knew, like, when I started my master's program 2 years ago, I knew that this was needed. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. But if we could, I'm glad that at the end of my master's program, when I'm finally graduating, at least I feel like I've accomplished something because I want to get the ball rolling.
Well, listen,
I realize.
you perked my ears when I heard, second grade to ninth grade. I mean,
Yeah.
Robert, what would happen if you said that to CSI?
They already know. They have my data.
Hey, what'd they say to you?
They know that we have a lot of multi-language learners.
No, but do they?
No, what would they say about
You're
something like
saying that
this?
you can move students from second grade to ninth grade, and you can guarantee it by manipulating the
The different
Combination.
testing, the
Yeah,
combination. They probably would not like to hear that I was manipulating anything.
Yeah, exactly. And even though I appreciate your, Santiago, thank you. It was really good words of wisdom. I appreciate that, we don't just respond to NWEA. Yes, they make the map tests. Yes, they provide accommodations. But if we really want good change, it can't just be for our kids. It's got to be for the state. It's got to say, the Lau versus Nickel case is still effective. Title VI is still effective. And, at the same time, we don't want to leave those students who were not educated in their own countries and who come here not knowing how to read even in their own language. And I appreciate that. That's extremely serious. We have to consider that. I don't want to say, well, it's the law, because sometimes laws don't look at the individual person, and that's wrong. For our students, we need to look at every single one of them. And we have to say, you know what? In this boat, where we are right now, this is what we can offer you, but we will constantly be pushing to see what's going on. Yeah, Edgar?
Edgar.
Terry, I'm
Yeah,
gonna take
well,
the presentation.
before I go, because I have to go, I just want to say the following. Terry, this is a great point that you bring, but I think Santiago just hit the spot.
I agree, yeah.
We should provide,
You have to
can you hear me?
unshare it.
Hello?
You good?
Go ahead.
Can
We
you
hear
hear
you.
me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. What Santiago hit the spot when he said that we should